The preliminary results of an independent autopsy report in the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells have been released. The cause and manner of death have been ruled undetermined, but civil rights attorney Ben Crump says foul play cannot be ruled out. Crump announced the findings during a press conference this morning where Nolan Wells' parents also pleaded for more transparency.
And new video may reveal the last moments Wells was seen alive. Investigators say he disappeared during a 4th of July boat trip with friends and was found dead 2 days later. Let's bring in Skyler Henry, who has been following this news conference today. Skyler, what have you learned about what has happened?
Sure, guys. Well, we are reviewing some of the notes that Attorney Crump put forth during this press conference. As you pointed out there, Vlad, the cause of Wells' death still undetermined pending an investigation, and that is sort of the crux of where we have been with this case from the very beginning, as not only the family of Nolan Wells, but those in the community have all called for transparency in this case and more clarity from the lead investigative agency, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, to try to put together a bit more clarity as it relates to a timeline in terms of what may have happened to the 18-year-old on that July 4th weekend. Crump went on to say that based off of the preliminary findings that Wells's body was too decomposed based off of the time the body was sent to Washington, D.C. for that third-party autopsy that was conducted by a well-accomplished pathologist that specializes in this sort of case. But the pathologist also found that the body had marks and also noticed discoloration, red discoloration on the back of his head. But that is something that isn't exactly uncommon, but also something that could potentially be tied to just the manner of which Wells's body was recovered in the or near the ocean in the first place. They are also saying that it is incredibly important to try to figure out what happened to Nolan in terms of him entering the water, whether that was something that was an accident, something that was on purpose. And then also, they say that they are calling for more clarity from the medical examiner in Mississippi who conducted the first autopsy on Nolan Wells, saying that there could potentially be a bit more answers there as it relates to additional clues and findings, especially considering that they are still waiting for parts of his body, his throat and the back of his neck, something that wasn't a part of the second autopsy, to potentially give a bit more clarity in terms of Nolan's airway. Could he have possibly drowned? What were the circumstances around a possible drowning? And was it an accident at all? I think it's also important to stress here that based off of these preliminary findings, that there is also not a toxicology report yet. That is something that we are waiting on from the Mississippi medical examiner, something that they had said initially will take several weeks when this autopsy was conducted 2 weeks ago, in terms of that potentially giving us more clarity as well in terms of these findings. But as you pointed out, Jolene, new information that we have been seeing as it relates to this case includes that video that was sent into TMZ that shows a man in similar blue trunks that match the photo of Nolan Wells that was also taken on that day. It could very well be some of the last footage of him seen alive. We know that his friends left Horn Island, which is about 10 miles off of Mississippi's Gulf Coast, about 30 minutes or so after that video was taken, or excuse me, about an hour and a half after that video was taken, because they were concerned about the boat that they were on taking on water. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions, especially from Nolan's parents, because they say that his cell phone and keys were found with the friends, not with Nolan, who they say chose to stay behind on Horn Island to, quote-unquote, meet with a girl. We know that his friends have cooperated with law enforcement officials up until this time, but officials have not given us any sort of indication in terms of what may be happening going forward in terms of the clarity and timeline in this case. We should point out that Crump and his legal team are also asking for this pathologist and his findings to be presented to a grand jury. We also know that this case will be going to a grand jury to determine whether any criminal charges should be brought forth at all in this case. But, guys, obviously still a lot of unanswered questions here.
Skyler Henry in Atlanta, thank you so much.
Let's bring in CBS News contributor Jessica Levision to talk more about this. So, Jessica, what you just heard from Skyler, what we know from what Attorney Crump has released, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that what Skyler said in terms of unanswered questions is exactly right. What we have today is, frankly, more information, but more information that is undetermined in terms of cause of death, in terms of exactly what happened in those last few minutes and hours before Mr. Wells did die. And so what we have here is an independent autopsy. As Skyler said, it's not a toxicology report. There were aspects of this independent autopsy that were, I don't want to say compromised, but made more difficult because there was a first autopsy. And at this point, I think we're just at a place where you can't rule anything in or out. I know for people who want answers, that's difficult, but by definition, undetermined means exactly that.
There is this new footage released of Wells in the hours before he was found dead. What do you think investigators are hoping to piece together with that potential evidence?
So I think at this point, investigators are just trying to have a timeline of what happened. As we heard thus far, friends are cooperating. They're talking about why the phone was left on the boat, whether I think part of the reason that we're interested in this footage is exactly where he was at different times, whether he was in swim trunks or clothed. Reporting indicates that he was found face down, fully clothed. They're just trying to piece together before the time of death, what happened leading up to that. And every piece of evidence, like a video or testimony from friends, will be part of putting that narrative together.
All right, Jessica Levision, with that legal analysis for us, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you.